You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the 300th episode of the Tony Kinnett Cast, but more on that later. Whether you're joining us on the radio, the TV network, the syndication style of the podcast, or the live stream on X or YouTube, it's great to have you here. And it's great to be here because you're either on the right side of the aisle and you are breathing a sigh of relief, or you are excited because you knew all along that this was going to work out fine. Or you're on the left and you have no idea what to think, except, well, I'm more than happy to tell you that the narratives have been churned out and are making their way to several House Democrats, Senate Democrats, and the last remaining media outlets that are still out there repeating the same things that they always repeat. This brings us to today. When last we spoke, there were these impending massive chonkular tariffs going into effect on China. And China was going to respond. They responded with a 34% tariff of their own. And then Trump was like, fine, have another 50%. So it's a 104% tariff on China. And then China sent out their Winnie the Pooh guy, and he was going to act all tough, and he was going to act all mean. He was going to impress all of us, and I will do my best interpretation of the Mandarin of the Chinese spokesperson. There is no wonder in a trade war and tariff war, and protectionism leads nowhere. We do not provoke trouble, nor are we intimidated by it. Pressuring and threatening are not the right way in dealing with China. No, you're just supposed to give China everything because it's China who does the pressuring and the threatening and the running over people with tanks. So when it comes to the Communist Chinese Party, it's important to remember three key things. They suck. They are a slave-holding communist bunch of scummish regime holders. And also, they have terrible, terrible taste in architecture. So those are three important things to remember about the Chinese Communist Party. Now, the tariffs went into effect over midnight, and the markets did not start off too hot today. Everyone was kind of waiting. And Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, came out, one lone ranger, because Elon Musk isn't doing, television interviews about the economic policies of the United States. Scott Bessent stepped up to the plate and again tried to reassure the market that these tariffs were in pursuit of better deals with other nations, which is what a lot of people had been hoping for and praying for, like hoping that was, in fact, the end goal of the tariffs. Here's Scott Bessent making that case this morning, and also why tariffs on China were a totally separate issue.
Our allies, Japan, South Korea, India, and I will note that they are all around China. We have Vietnam coming today.
Yeah.
So everyone is coming to the table, and basically China's surrounded.
And so going into the markets today, the idea that the United States was focusing on China and that the other nations of the world, especially those that were coming, these 70-ish world leaders, that were going to come and ask for a 0-for-0 trade agreement, which is objectively better than what it was before we went into this. And you can start talking about the cost of what the markets lost in the turmoil. At the moment, there are countries with tariffs on goods from the United States. And Trump, who had been very, very, very cagey about this, he basically communicated maybe there's going to be deals, maybe there won't. I really love tariffs. Maybe they'll last forever. Maybe we'll tariff you until you are in the 9th level of hell, looking up at the sky and wondering why there is a 27-foot tall tariff looming over you. And that was Trump's, general policy. Maybe they're going to last forever. And the market really, really didn't care for this. And then out of nowhere today, and I mean out of nowhere, if you haven't necessarily been paying attention to the pressure from some Republican members of Congress, again, as well as the larger portion of the business world. And Trump posted today, and I think we actually have this one lined up on B-roll. Yep. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. So he reaches back and he smacks China right across the face. knocks a couple of teeth skittering across the, open wet soup market. And then says, at some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, I do enjoy the conversely, just, in other words, in the meantime. And then based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the U.S., I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, it wasn't particularly clear at this point in time whether Trump meant that it's a 0% tariff during the 90 days and then the 10% kicks in for the reciprocal nations, or the 10% kicks in now. And the White House hasn't been particularly clear on this yet, because with a lot of those reciprocal nations, that 10% doesn't apply anyway for example, Mexico and Canada in the USMCA. And within 2 minutes, and I timed it, because I got an immediate buzz, a message from team members, I got a contact high from the statement itself, and then on social media, reaching out to me, blasting my phone with notifications. The stock market soared. And why did the stock market soar? Because Trump backed off of the permanent tariff suggestion. The stock market was not in fear of temporary tariffs. The stock market is in fear of the Peter Navarro, numbskull economics idea that we can set up 25 to 75% tariffs on everybody, and that will somehow magically fairy godmother transport jobs back to the United States, and it'll be just like the 50s again, and where women are wearing gingham skirts and washing dishes, and the men are like, hey, honey, I'm off to the factory. That's not going to be a thing. And as every person on every part of the right, except for the most populist faction, who were 90s labor Democrats, pointed out, just because Nancy Pelosi said it in the 90s doesn't make it true. Now, if we're talking about China, that's totally different. China is the geopolitical adversary of the United States, who has been leeching off of us since the United States reached out and helped China in the midst of the Sino-Soviet split of the Cold War. It's helpful to read history. And when Trump backed off, or in this case, Trump finally decided that it was time to bring about the final stage of this game of chicken and moved it through, the markets immediately shot up. And by the way, the result of the markets at the end of the day, I started tracking them throughout the kind of the rest of the day here, and what you saw was an initial jump and then a little short sell where people are like, oh man, I don't know if this is going to stay going up, so I'm going to sell to make back some of the money. And then you had what I call a recurring sine wave with a plus Y. Y is the vertical axis on a graph. So what you would see is the sine wave going up, and then it would sell, and then a little more would buy, and it would just kind of go up and up and up. And it ended up being the largest gross gain of stock points for the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500, I think, in history. Now, of course, the points matter a little bit less than the percentages. The Dow gained 7.87% in one day. That's in the top 20 of gains in history. The NASDAQ gained 12.16%. The S&P gained 9.52%, and the volatility index plummeted. And why does any of this matter in particular? Well, two things. Number one would be that it turns out the market, in the manner that it was currently going because of the eternal tariffs conversation, scared the living crap out of people in United States industries that are both in manufacturing and investment. And newsflash, guys, a lot of businesses in the United States run on investment. That's just a fact of life. And so screwing over the investors out of some idea that they're the rich screwing everyone else over. I don't know what Bernie Sanders line you're pulling that from. But President Trump recognized that, and as one of the reasons for for bringing about the next stage of the market game. Here's Trump.
About why you decided to put a 90-day pause.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening...
So, of course, the president talking about the people getting a little skittish, and he now has a core reason to move things along. Radio crew, we're going to see you in just a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So, there are a couple of really hot takes that have dropped that are really stupid. So, number one, apparently it's now bad to point out that the market raised in a day because this is like saying, oh, everyone knew what they were doing all along, and this was always the master plan. No. That's not the case. The reason that a lot of people are excited is because there is a bit of a micro war going on in an ideologically diverse administration between guys like Scott Bessent and Elon Musk, and then guys like Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick. And Peter Navarro, after spewing a bunch of nonsense, and again, Trump listening to his advisors with what he wants to accomplish, or political victories and to leave a legacy, brought forth all of these silly, stupid ideas of like permanent 40% tariff. Well, if China and the EU do tariffs, why can't we? It works for them. No, it doesn't work for them. It's like saying, well, hey, other countries have gun laws. Why don't we have really strict gun laws? I'm sorry, since when are we looking at the European Union and China for advice? The United States is the most powerful economy in the world. If we're using tariffs, it is to get something done, not to permanently lock away United States power on the global stage. We tell people what to do. We're the leaders of the free world. Act like it, not be like Obama or Biden or Clinton and simp around and beg people for forgiveness for existing. And not this build walls and shut everyone else out because we're scared of everyone, like the hyper-isolationism view. Well, this didn't stop the Democrats from finally responding, and it's hilarious. Representative Stephen Horsford, in a hearing today, he's a representative from Nevada, a Democrat, decided that this is Donald Trump doing market manipulation. He's like tricking, he was manipulating the market to enrich his friends. Yes, the strategies. Here's Stephen Horsford on C-SPAN 3.
Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
It
has offshored all of our factories.
And what has that done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people.
This cracks me up. So, first of all, when you make an accusation, you require what is called a burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the person making the accusation to prove. If you say, this is market manipulation, show me the proof. You're going, well, how is it not? I mean, there's no strategy here. You don't know that. You don't know that. And by the way, there is a strategy here. So producer Daniel put a little poll in the live chat earlier, like, what game is Trump playing here? Chess, checkers, 4D chess. I think about Chinese checkers. Nice. That's funny. I like that. The answer is none of them. He's playing chicken. We've gone over this before. I've talked about this every single time. Donald Trump uses one negotiation strategy and one only. Whenever he is in leadership, whenever he is making a decision, whenever he is competing against someone else, he does chicken. Chicken. That's it. Who is going to cave first? That is Donald Trump's only strategy. It's what he uses every time, bar none. And if Donald Trump came out and said, all of these tariffs are temporary, then countries would simply outlast the tariffs. Now, am I saying this was Trump's plan all along? No. I'm not saying that. Trump is a little more reckless than that from time to time. However, the idea that this was all some big chess move one way or the other, or it was complete idiocy, neither of those are true. And pretending the first administration and things we already know about Trump didn't happen is silly. I don't want to leave Horsford alone, though, really quick before pointing out that this brilliant man yelled at an empty room.
WTF? Who's in charge?
I love it. All right, we'll be back in a second. I'm going to pick up the radio crew. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Got a little more quick news roundup for you. We haven't even talked about how the Chinese situation is developing. We're going to have to come back and hit that in some bonus tonus. So for those of you who've never listened to the show and you're like, what did he just say? The folks who listen to the show, since my Twitter handle is the Tonus, TheTonus, decided that if there's any extra show that goes on past the radio clock, which per FCC regulation rules is between 7:06:05 Eastern and what's the other end, Allison? It's 7:57 and 20 seconds. Isn't that like the hard cutout?
Right on the dot.
Gotcha. Okay, so any of the show that goes on after that over on the live stream side of things, they call it bonus tonus because there's so much news. I can't fit it all in. So we'll talk about the great Shark Tank guy, Kevin O'Leary. We'll talk about Pete Hegseth. We'll play a little Fortunate Son. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to talk for just a moment, though, about this temporary hold that a Texas judge put on the deportation of 3 Venezuelan men under the Alien Enemies Act. So, as those of you who have been plugged into the news for 24 hours over the last couple of days might remember, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in a 5-4 decision that James Boasberg, the Chief Judge of the D.C. District Court, did not have the authority to issue nationwide injunctions on preventing foreign enemies, namely illegal aliens, suspected of being members of terror organizations like Tren de Aragua from Venezuela or MS-13 or the Sinaloa Cartel from Mexico. Those organizations, you're allowed to kick those people out. And it should be noted that as far as the Supreme Court's decision ruled, it was not that Trump couldn't get rid of individuals, just that if you wanted to file a suit, it had to be from that district where the people were being removed from. And number 2, they had to have a hearing where they could have a chance to say, oh, by the way, I'm not a gang member, and then prove it. Because if you're not a citizen of the United States, you don't get the whole innocent until proven guilty thing. That is a right reserved for citizens. And so due process for an illegal immigrant is, hey, why are you here? Not legally. And also, you look like the Santa Muerte tattoo on your chest is giving off gang member vibes because, only MS-13 and the Sinaloa Cartel literally worship an angel of death. So, mind telling me why you're here, SA? So that's a question in this particular instance. Now, the judge, although I'm seeing a lot of complaints online, saying that, this is a totally out of order. He has no right to stop any kinds of deportations. The judge, from what I'm reading in the injunction, says that these 3 dudes, just 3 of them, they just need a hearing first, which can be organized pretty quickly. So maybe a little bit of a little overreaction there. Number 2, speaking of C-SPAN 3, which is a channel I did not know existed. You have like ESPN1, ESPN2. So there's C-SPAN, which just broadcasts, things happening in the government all day and little debates between politicos. And there was apparently a 3rd C-SPAN channel, which I can only assume is right next to ESPN's The Ocho and Corncob TV. So C-SPAN 3 was airing yesterday a shadow hearing. What's a shadow hearing, you asked? Well, a bunch of House Democrats and Senate Democrats got together, and they formed, well, not really a hearing, because none of them have the committee authority to just set up their own hearings. They're not the majority in either house, but they wanted to set up a hearing because, well, as you're going to hear, of course, Adam Schiff go into detail, this is apparently just like being a Jewish journalist in the 1930s when Hitler was coming to power. His words, not mine. Pretty wild. Here you go.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House.
By the way, this isn't necessarily unprecedented. Every Democrat went, this is unprecedented. Curse word, curse word, curse word. This has never happened before. Unprecedented. Guys, Republicans have held meetings like these before, like in rooms or chambers of committees in the House, and the Democrats turned off the lights on them and locked the doors. So that the lights are on right now speaks very kindly and graciously of Speaker Johnson, and I'm glad he did, because, we get to see the unprecedented Adam Schiff wobble his triple chin.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty.
To have and to hold in sickness and in health, do not pass go.
Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight.
Ask Schiff's girlfriend or wife. He's nobody's first choice.
To assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of government. But to our great disappointment, our Republican colleagues have abdicated that important responsibility. They have stood by as the president has run roughshod over the legislative branch and turned Congress into little more than a rubber stamp. So today we'll hold the first of what we hope will be more bicameral oversight hearings. We will do the investigative work that our colleagues across the aisle refuse to do. We will expose the illegality, abuse, and corruption of this administration. And
Wait a minute. I was told that you're not supposed to have, unelected, unappointed, not Senate confirmed investigations into government corruption. Wait a second here. That's a little suspicious.
Within the Department of Justice. We will have brave witnesses speak to what's actually happening behind closed doors, how the Trump administration continues to try to intimidate them from speaking out.
Like brave witnesses, like the producer Nick. What was the lady that came out and accused Brett Kavanaugh of drinking beer in high school? Christine Blasey Ford. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for the bravery.
And why it matters to Americans across the country. The Trump administration is following a well-worn playbook. History serves as a guide and as a warning. In the 1930s, a Jewish lawyer in Berlin tracked in meticulous detail how Germany gradually became what he called a dual state.
And here we go.
First, to keep the country running, the ordinary legal system remained in place for most people. And yet, step by step, a parallel system.
I'm not going to hear any more of this nonsensical Nazi comparison. Again, here we go again. So Trump is both like a silly buffoon bouncing around. There's no strategy. There's no strategy. The representative from Nevada yelled, "No strategy. You can't predict it. Rah! Market manipulation." And at the same time, he's also masterminds Hitler, coming in, goose-stepping, and setting up dual states. Terrible, terrifying. Oh, no. Yeah, okay. No. But best of luck to you. Thank you for the C-SPAN 3 coverage. By the way, over on the immigration side of things, regarding the Tren de Aragua members who are, busy shipping themselves out, Scott Jennings, who is the gem of CNN, the only reason they have any ratings left, completely wrecked Abby Phillips over the issue, and it is 100% worth watching and listening to for those on the live stream. We'll catch the radio crew in a second, back when we bring in Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. This Scott Jennings clip, live streams crew, it's pretty amazing.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. 7 million means that they're not just going after criminals.
Well, they're going after people who are in the country illegally, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying the criminals, this is a much bigger universe.
Doesn't that make you a criminal?
No, it doesn't.
To come across the border illegally?
Coming into the country illegally is a civil offense. It's not a criminal offense.
Okay, if you come into the country illegally, here's the message. We're going to find you and send you back. I mean, I'm sorry, that's the way it is. And I think the government should pull all the levers at its disposal to find people and pull this off. It's what the American people asked Donald Trump to do. Yes, they should be deporting violent people. Yes, they should be deporting people who committed violent acts before they came here. But at some juncture, if you're going to allow any illegal immigration at all, the message then goes out. Just get here. It'll probably work out for you. That was the last administration. This is a different one.
The lady is just, her soul is leaving her body. Scott Jennings is just completely wrecking. By the way, the argument that coming into the country illegally is just like a civil offense is not at all true. The evasion of federal immigration enforcement, the evasion of federal officers and points of entry is in fact a criminal offense. If you're at, LaGuardia and you're stopping and you're flying from Canada down to the Bahamas. And on the way, you stop in LaGuardia for a quick layover because, I don't know, your pilot gets scared of trips that are longer than an hour and a half. So you stop at LaGuardia, and while you're there, you're like, I'm going to take in the sights of the New York City. And so you leave New York, leave at LaGuardia, and now you're in the United States. You somehow slip past customs. That's a civil offense. You evaded customs. You came into the United States, kind of accidentally you're here, or your visa expires. And you're like, oh no, I forgot to renew my visa. Ah, mamma mia. I guess it's, I don't know what, like Canadian, Italian, Swedish. I don't know. Imagine a pasta chef from IKEA. That's how he would respond in that civil offense situation. And then you have people who evade all of the signs that say, hey, port of entry here. Border officials, immigration officials with these beautiful things called forms. You fill out these forms. And they're like, hey, do you want to come into the United States? Fill out this form. Where you come from? What's your vaccination status? What's your medical record? Have you ever committed any crimes? Who's coming with you? Who are you leaving behind? Are you going to be sending money back? Are you going to pay taxes? Tell us about yourself. And then get in line, because there's people who have filled out the legal immigration process. And when you skip that, and you just come into the country, and then you hide, that is a criminal offense. And I'm sorry, I don't have the sympathy. I don't care whether you're a violent criminal or whether you are the caricature of whatever the left imagines that every illegal immigrant is. Don't ask Jasmine Crockett. She thinks they're crop pickers. But on the other side of things, the left's leadership at this moment has genuinely just been reduced to AOC and Bernie Sanders when Jasmine Crockett's not issuing racial rants. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, who is a gem, on Fox last night has revealed the Republican strategy for AOC.
What do you think of the new leadership, Jasmine, AOC, and Bernie?
I consider Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez to be the leader of the Democratic Party. She's entitled to her opinion. I'm entitled to mine. As I've said about her before, I think she's the reason there are directions on a shampoo bottle. And our plan for dealing with her... You didn't plan that out. We got to hurry. Our plan for dealing with her is called Operation Let Her Speak.
Fantastic. We'll be back in a second with Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith of Indiana. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. I do enjoy watching certain outlets who claim to be these unbiased, wonderful, just, keeping government accountable, man, style sites, choose certain things to cover and certain things not to cover. They make the case, well, we're not biased over here. And then they cover the weirdest scandals I think I've ever seen. And one of the latest scandals from the Indiana Capital Chronicle, which is funded by a left-leaning Swiss billionaire, made the decision to post a picture of a Tesla Cybertruck with a white paint job in the lieutenant governor's parking spot in Indianapolis. The scandal. She says, this Tesla Cybertruck is now in Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith's State House spot. We are seeking answers. And then she does a little hat tip to Whitney Downard, who is their State House reporter. Well, we got Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith on. So how does it feel to be a part of an auto scandal?
Well, I feel honored, I think. It's a Tesla. I wanted to show our support to President Trump and Elon Musk. The state of Indiana stands with them. We appreciate everything they're doing with Doge. We just had this weekend where all these protesters were calling Trump a Nazi and calling Elon Musk Hitler. And so I just said, we're gonna show some support to Elon and just park a Tesla Cybertruck in the lieutenant governor's spot. It was an amazing car. That car is awesome. I told my wife when she asked about what it was like to drive it, I was like, it's an experience. I mean, it really is a cool vehicle.
Now hang on a second here. I heard you use the word was because all of the scandal in this particular story is that you have enriched yourself by buying an $88,000 luxury vehicle on the taxpayer dime. How could you? Oh, the horror. And that's what people were. I made fun of the Capitol Chronicle's coverage of this, saying that, if she's excited for other breaking stories, she can find out why my local Arby's no longer takes 4 for $4 coupons. And people were mad at me, saying that, well, you don't care. The lieutenant governor of Indiana makes $116,000 a year. Before taking that office, Mr. Beckwith was a pastor. Aren't you a little curious how he can afford one of those dumb Cybertrucks? You're talking about it like was. Do you not own one of these Tesla Cybertrucks?
Breaking news on the Tony Kinnett cast. I do not own a Cybertruck, although I would love to someday, but I do not own one. It was a friend of a friend's, and it is no longer in my possession, unfortunately.
I happen to know, I just, in case you were wondering, I park in the same spot at my church in Newcastle every Sunday. Oh, whenever I'm there, I park in the same spot. And if there is ever someone driving a really fancy car and they sling it in, no one rushes in and goes, oh my gosh, Tony must be moneybags, man. Look at the fancy car in his spot. And people were pointing this out in their comments that this is a licensed and tagged vehicle. I don't know if you know anything about state government, no matter who's in charge. It doesn't exactly move just like that. But they still ran the story. The Indianapolis Star, the dying Kinnett outlet, had 2 different articles about this. Haley Colombo, there you go. I got the Colombo excellent expertise in investigation over here. On April 2nd, new $90,000 taxpayer-funded SUVs for Diego and Micah raise eyebrows. I mean, what's the deal behind these stories, man? I mean, are you just doing JD Byrider commercials or what?
No, not at all. So we've saved in my office, Governor Braun, and then myself included. We've been cutting spending where we can. Like we've been going through and with a fine-tooth comb and saving taxpayer dollars. And so what happened was the former LG car, we got it, we came into office, but it'd been in a couple different accidents. It was starting to kind of do some weird things where we're like, this may not make it around the state for the next 4 and even, Lord willing, more years than that. And I've been in sales. I've driven many, many miles, in the sales industry. And I know when, a company invests in a car, you want a good car. You want something that's, not luxury, but it's very much like it'll last. It's a reliable car because it'll end up saving the company money if you do it right the first time, as opposed to having to throw money into this money pit of a breaking down car. And so I just said, hey, let's not see this coming. Let's get something that's reliable. My stipulations were American made, big enough to get my team around, and safe and reliable. And so they were like, well, do you have anything in mind? I said, well, a Tahoe. My wife has a Tahoe. That's it's fine. And I told them, I said, nothing luxury, but a Tahoe's fine. And so it goes out of our hands at that point. It goes into the Department of Administration, and they go and they look and they get this option. And so we say, okay, that's good. Well, in the defense of the people who are being critical right now, it is expensive. 2025 is an expensive car. It was an $88,000 car, and I was kind of like, that's a lot. However, we did get a trade in on it, so we knocked it down $25,000 for the trade in value of the old car. So it was like, okay, that $63,000, that's a little bit more manageable, and in my opinion. So then we did it. It was fine. Well, then they look at that price tag. Oh my gosh, $88,000, and again, new car. However, if I would have been able to have the freedom to go out and shop around and not have to go through procurement and use whoever their vendors are, I would have been able to find something much cheaper. But you can't do that because that's the government bureaucratic system. No, you're not allowed to go, Lieutenant Governor, and look and shop around. We've got our guy over here that's going to get it. And so it was a way to hit me. It was a way to kind of say, oh my gosh, look what he's doing. And so I just kind of laughed and chuckled. And then I said, okay, fine. How about this? I'm gonna trade it in, and we'll get a Tesla Cybertruck, so that way we can show our support for Elon Musk and as Hoosiers. And then that came to a representative in the House who had some very choice language for me on Twitter or X, and said some very not nice things. And he and he dared me. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. So I do enjoy the particular trend among Democrats right now who they don't have anything to add as far as a vision for their jurisdiction, whether it be in the Indiana State House or, in the Congress right now. So what they do to make themselves sound extra mad, they get out their potato head angry eyes. They throw out a little profanity when in their statements. So they don't just dare you, they bleeping dare you. And so Mitch Gore, he takes a picture, like a screenshot of a tweet you sent, just talking about the purchase of the Tahoe. And you say, well, hey, maybe we'll look and trade the Tahoe in for a Tesla Cybertruck. If this is a $80-something thousand Tahoe, maybe it goes in for a Tesla, of whatever the price is on that. And so he then says, I bleeping dare you. So got out his big boy words, for that. And the follow-up was, again, Nikki Kelly of the Indiana Capitol Chronicle delivering a very important update that the Cybertruck is now in the parking spot. We are seeking answers. Oh, thank God. I was worried that investigative journalism was no longer done.
It was kind of one of those moments when I saw Representative Mitch Gore's tweet to me. I called my team. I was like, all right, somebody's got to find me a Cybertruck for Monday. This was Friday, right? Mind you. So we had the weekend to kind of figure it out. And I just, I didn't tell anybody. I just drove it in a Cybertruck. We found the Cybertruck. The owner was very generous and was very happy to help us get the point across. And so I just, drove to work, and only a few people knew I was doing it. And I just parked it in there. And we didn't, honestly, I didn't tell anybody, didn't say anything. I didn't walk it in. Nobody, and then, hey, everyone come look at this. By the time I got up to my office, there was already the Nikki Kelly tweet. And so it was funny because I wanted to go put this message on the windshield, and we didn't even have time to get the message on the windshield.
That's how closely they were watching the spot. They've got their Indiana Capitol Chronicles got their reporter out there in the bushes. There's like those 3 bushes in the parking lot right there. They're like old and worn and have been peed on like by 800 times in the city. And she's just in there in the bushes like, I'm going to get him. There he goes.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
You know what the beauty about the Cybertruck is? So we could actually, it's recording everything, right? There's 16 cameras on there. So we could actually listen and see who's taking pictures and when. We were like, hey, we want to see who took this picture. Oh, it was a Channel 8 news guy. Oh, there he is taking the picture right now. It's awesome, man. I tell you what, that car is legit. I mean, it's pretty cool.
I gotta tell you, I've done some, kind of snap to reporting where I've run into an area. There was I can't remember the exact moment. I was at a major kind of political conference or maybe something in DC, and someone major showed up and they were going down the escalators, and it turned into kind of a fight between representatives. Maybe that was the situation, something along those lines. And I had sprinted across the street, gone through security just to, get a bit of video of this argument, this fight breaking out. There are professionally paid news journalists and reporters that just tore out of wherever they were, whether, they were at news headquarters or whether they were in their apartments or downtown somewhere, to take a picture of your parking spot before it moved. Now we're really getting down to, all right, a real question here. This is something that I did want to ask you. So the Indy Star, in a follow-up article, they said in framing the cost of this car, right? They're talking about how much that it cost, for the state to purchase a car. They say, well, this is, I want to say like 25% more, or a similar amount, more than the average annual income of a Hoosier. And I was a little, my eyebrows raised at that particular description, because how many average Hoosiers go out and just buy the brand new car outright, like immediately? Like they don't rent the car. I know a lot of people that make well under what their car is worth, and they're financing or renting the car, but this is how they're choosing to describe it. It's so hackish.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, listen, we've all, gone out and said, hey, I can lease something. The monthly payment is this, and it's okay. It's a $70,000 car. You don't make you don't make that much. Well, you can still potentially afford the monthly payments and pay it off over time. You can, I think, again, they're framing it in a way to say, hey, Micah, Lieutenant Governor, is wasting your tax dollars, which is absolutely not true. We're not doing that. And listen, we want our executives, in my opinion, even when I wasn't Lieutenant Governor, it's like, I want our executives to be able to travel the state without impunity. I want them to be able to get where they need to go, where they, that make sure they're safe. And within reason, like, again, no luxury cars. You don't need a luxury car, but you want a safe and reliable car that can get your team to a place so that you, on behalf of the people of Indiana, can go and do your job. Same thing. I have no problem with Air Force One. Very expensive plane, right? That is an expensive plane. I have no problem with my tax dollars and our tax dollars going to that plane, because we want our president to travel safely, securely, with the people he needs to have, and we want it to represent the executive branch of the United States. And so I think that's where I come back to you. And most people are pretty reasonable. They just kind of say, hey, listen, like, this is a non-story, and they're chuckle like they're calling me like, did you really buy that Cybertruck? And like, no. And they're like, we thought so, but well done. That was very well done.
So you realize we are going to get tweets now suggesting that you compared the new Tahoe to Air Force One. So what we're going to have to do, and we're going to grassroots fund it. We're going to find some auto shop in the state. And they better not have made any political donations in the last 25 years, or they'll be reported on. So we'll find a Democrat auto detailer, whatever, when they're not, out protesting Tesla, and they can do an Air Force One paint job on the, we'll call it Hoosier Force One or something,
I love it, man. That'd be fantastic. But I think it does go to show, Tony, that there is certainly a bias in media, right? Like this. If this was on the other side of the aisle, there would not be this rush to judgment, but they want so badly to be able to just crucify a conservative, somebody on the right, that there's no like honest, like, can we just get the full story? Now, if they would have come and said, hey, what, can we have an actual, like, dive into the Tahoe and the price of the Tahoe? How did this come to be? We would have laid it out for them, but they never did. They tried to get snippets and just snapshots of, one statement here, one statement there, make the story the way they want it. And so that's why, I think Republicans are learning how to fight back. Donald Trump has taught us that. I'm so thankful for him, for Elon Musk, for the whole team, the whole Trump administration, for what they're doing. And so we just want them to know, in Indiana, they've got support. Keep doing what they're doing. They're really saving our country, and we're so grateful.
Look, I just to kind of close off with this one thing that is kind of, I don't know. I think that with the Capitol Chronicle, or with any outlet that claims to cover, state affairs, someone who's claiming to cover local politics or politics in general, the desperate need to find a story that is, quite honestly, a nothing burger, because there has to be a story, and we have to get on this right now and get a story out there. There are days when there's just not news coming out of the State House, or there's not news that's what does a friend of mine call it, sexy news, things that people are going to click on and read and like run to. And so when they try so hard and they fall on their face like this, I'm really looking forward to the Capitol Chronicle piece on the Greenfield Arby's no longer accepting 4-for-4 coupons. So, Lieutenant Governor Beckwith, thanks so much for stopping by the show. Appreciate it. And we'll have you back on sooner or later.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. This is the 300th episode, and just if you would allow me, before we get back to dunking on what might be some of the silliest, just pearl-clutching outrage over this market manipulation argument. Thanks for that, Allison. I like a little jolt to the music there. I thought I would take a moment just to thank the producers of the show, Reeve, Wermus, who's been an intern over with the Daily Signal, who has tortured me time and time again with horrible, awful clips.
Let me just go ahead and get this out there right now. If a man ever looks at me and says, "Hey babe, what's for dinner?" and means it, assumes I'm in charge of dinner, what's for dinner? Divorce.
Those
and we are here today because while we know that Donald Trump thinks that he can place his hands anywhere.
Ain't nobody want to be touching you anywhere, Sarah McBride. Anyway, I do appreciate the awful clips that Reeve has put forward. Of course, producer Lou, who books most of the guests and argues a lot. He's an Italian from Pennsylvania. That kind of comes, stock and cotton there. Of course, producer Nick, kind of new over here on the set, causing lots of trouble in the background. Producer Daniel, with his watchful eyes over just about everything regarding the show. Really thankful for the work that he does, both in the chat, out of the chat, with the various edits and the analysis he brings. And of course, producer Allison, where the syndication starts over at 93 WIBC. Allison, I don't know how you have managed to survive me being just an absolute grumpy tool the entire time.
I don't think any of those words describe you, Tony.
Do you know how many times I've made fun of Taylor Swift? Come on now.
That's true. That is the one beef I have with you.
See, there we go. Now we're really, chugging on all cylinders there. Of course, the Daily Signal and WIBC, where the show is out from, as well as our syndication partners, whether it's in Pensacola or Aurora or Little Rock. We're thrilled that you guys do choose to air the show, whether that's on cable and over in Wisconsin and Oklahoma, elsewhere. So many great places that we love working with. A huge thank you. As soon as they fire me, I promise I will not do a "I'm fired, but I'm okay" podcast like Joy Reid. So Joy Reid from MSNBC and her I'm not going to cry because she was canned because no one watches her. She has a podcast. And we're one of the shows that have passed her. So the Tony Kinnett cast and our daily shenanigans over here have actually broken into the top 40 political podcasts in the United States. We are particularly excited about this, mainly because some of the people that we're passing, I know. And it's nice to give them a lot of grief over it, especially when they're on the left side of the aisle. So thank you very much again for that. That's the last I'll belabor that particular thing. Let's get on to a little of the pearl clutching extreme, the little pearl clutching extraordinaire over from the left regarding this market manipulation argument. So you have the left-wing pundits who are suggesting over on X that, this is easily stock market manipulation because Donald Trump knew that if he said that he was going to pause tariffs, then the stock market was going to go up, which is like saying, I gave my child dinner and they ate it and then they stopped being hungry. Yeah, but that doesn't make it illegal. It doesn't make it some kind of weird manipulation. What the president of the United States says tends to have an effect on the stock market. In the age of social and broadcast media, when those at the New York Stock Exchange have wall-to-wall TVs, search any picture of the New York Stock Exchange, that place has TVs all over it, up and down it, that aren't just, displaying the trade figures and the stock buying and selling prices and those transactions. Not just the derivatives on the screen there, boys and girls, all of the news stations, period. Including when the president gets up and makes statements. And when the president of the United States says, this policy that the investors in the United States do not particularly enjoy, we're not going to do, at least for 90 days, the market's like, I like that. So Aaron Rupar, who, if you don't know who that is, don't worry about it, you're not missing anything, made this case, I wonder who Trump told about his tariff pause in advance. Would have been very lucrative information to have. Ooh, did Donald Trump give any indication that you should buy stocks today? On April 9th, 2025, Trump tweeted out, "This is a great time to buy Donald John Trump." If the president of the United States on his social media platform releases a statement that says, "This is a great time to buy stocks," and then goes out and with a single couple of sentences causes the stock market to think things are going to get better and the stock's raising. You don't take that advice, bud. That's on you. If you only believe like whispered words in back rooms where Nancy Pelosi's intern whispers sweet nothings and stock secrets to you, whispers like it's a weird cologne commercial. New stocks for men. And you don't understand that, maybe the spoken word of the president in front of the entire world amidst a large trade war in which diplomatic foreign policy and the U.S. economy are inadvertently linked, because the United States economy is the economy which every other economy on planet Earth, period, including the countries that hate us, every economy is built on our economy. World peace is built on the joyous pieces of the United States military. The president is the most powerful man in the world. What he does matters. Oh, it's stock manipulation. Yeah. I believe you. All right, we're going to stick around for a few more thoughts on China. And just for a second, those on the radio crew, will see you soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. All right, crew. Just a little something special. This would be Kevin O'Leary. Now, look, venture capitalists, just because they have money doesn't make them right, doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make them smart, doesn't make them stupid. The morality of life is not bequeathed. Bequeathed? Bequested. Nick. I have no idea. Bequeathed. On any individuals out there in life just because they do or don't have money. And sometimes these venture capitalists say rather stupid things. Mark Cuban, excellent example. But Kevin O'Leary made a very interesting point here. Who gives a fresh-picked hoot what China's communist regime thinks of the United States? And that the Chinese government, which likes to pretend that it's on equal footing with the United States, whose entire slave economy is built on the United States buying its stuff. I want to see here. Percentage of Chinese trade to nations. That's exactly what I thought. The primary export destinations include the United States, who is almost double the secondary option, which is Hong Kong, which doesn't count because Hong Kong is once again a part of China. And then following that are Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam, all down to 4%. So the United States economy is a keystone part of Chinese export industry, and most of their industries are export driven. Other than, I don't know, getting weird diseases. So the argument from the United States is that China is going to have to be dealt with at one point or another. And so Kevin O'Leary, over this morning, sorry about that, brought a pretty based argument, I will say, when it came to how far the United States should go in dealing with China. Check it out.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed.
That is correct. That is 100% wholeheartedly correct. So a couple of things that we're going to dig into, and allow me to explain from my Teddy Rooseveltian conservative foreign policy perspective very quickly here why this makes sense. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but we're in the bonus tonus section of the show. So in the bonus tonus section of the show, better get the flag up. And there we go. So allow me to explain why. The IP conversation, first of all, people in the United States, they invent things, they create things. Those things are copyrighted, they are trademarked. And in China, there are entire industries, entire corporations with tens of thousands of employees who are wholly dedicated to taking American products, American software, American inventions, and reverse engineering them and then selling them cheaply to undercut the American. That's thievery, and that is piracy. And the idea that you could work your entire life to create something that changes humanity and you just want to live off of some of the fruits of that. You have a right to trademark certain inventions, theories, softwares, and ideas so that you can benefit from it. Or that if it, God forbid, it has some type of negative potential, that you can control and then be held accountable for the results of your invention. China takes it and says, we're going to make it, and we're going to just throw it out there, and who cares if it looks the same as your product and someone uses it and it breaks and it's broken glass in their mouth, which happens. Or poisonous lead paint on products, which happens. Or all of the other things that the Chinese Communist Party does absolutely bleep all about when it comes to regulating their industries. That's theft and it's piracy from the United States. Right off the top of the bat. Number two, China is built on slavery. It is built on slavery. The Apple factory in China that manufactures iPhones does not let people leave. It's not just a sweatshop. We've become accustomed, we've become desensitized to the word sweatshop. When we mean sweatshop, we're not talking about some factory in northern India, which is no paradise on earth. It doesn't have air conditioning. It's not exactly clean, but people are putting the Nike shoes together. And, well, yeah, it may not be particularly wonderful at this particular place in India, but people aren't held there at gunpoint. In China, people are held at gunpoint to keep factories moving. That is slavery. They take Christians and they take Muslims, because there are no Jews left in China. They take Christians and they take Muslims and they put them in slave labor camps. And by the way, when people like me, and I'm going to make this clear, don't care that Amazon products from China are going to get more expensive, that's why. It is done through actual, genuine, physical slavery. It's not people in Mexico agreeing to do the work for $1 an hour. It's not people in Bangladesh agreeing to do the work for 50 cents an hour. It is people under actual, genuine, honest-to-God, objective, definitional slavery making your product. You don't have a right to buy from slavery. I don't care if you want to buy cheap products from China for slavery. I don't care. Cry somewhere else. You don't get any essential products you need desperately. Well, America loves cheap products. That's true. Absolutely they do. 100% they do. And I am all for helping expand the economies of India and other places around China that don't participate in slavery. If there's someone out there who wants to work for $1 an hour, cool, great, let them. In China, cool, great, let them. But as long as there is a government that is forcing someone to do labor at the end of a barrel of a gun, that is slavery, and the United States should not be complicit in propping up the Chinese government, because back in the 1950s, the Soviets and China, those two communist governments had a split on who was being more purist to the communist whatever, and they split apart. And in order to give a middle finger to the Soviet Union, the United States gave a lot of support to China, and they later opened up markets, and China became this kind of pseudo-communist socialist with some kind of like outsized trading to the United States. And so you footed the bill for China to prop up its disgusting regime, which has been responsible for the death of millions and millions of people. We have no idea how many people actually have died under the communist rule of China. And that's just the second reason. The third reason that the United States should not be dependent on China is because of the military allies and the destabilization of the regime of China, which is what Kevin O'Leary landed on. The Chinese government under Mao was a stronger, more dictatorially controlling government because of the technology of the time. During the reign of Mao up into the 70s, there was not a mass communication system so that one could get information into and out of China. there was a lot less ethnic tension because China had just come through that massive revolution, and that first very zealous generation was ready and raring to go. Now, just a couple of more points here on this particular conversation. Now in China, there is extreme ethnic tension. The economy is failing. There are massive ghost towns. The Chinese government is failing. I'm going to repeat that one more time. China puts out ads. And they're like, we have this new DeepSeek AI. Oh, wow, it's so amazing. It, with only 1/3 of the power of these NVIDIA chips in a room that's 15 times as small and half the memory and 1/3 the power, it can do 27 times the work, which is every effing communist commercial ever. They had an entire jet production line called Foxbat. And oh, that was so amazing. It was going to do all this amazing, incredible stuff, and it was going to blow past the United States. And the United States took it seriously and ended up creating one of the best jets of all time. I've told that story on the show at least 5 or 6 times at this point. We did an entire episode with Bill Whittle about it. You can go find that over on the YouTube. As far as the United States is concerned, relative to the regime destabilization of China, Kevin O'Leary is correct. China has less of a grip on China. A true communist regime can put fear into the hearts of people to make them do the labor. A failing communist regime has to do so at gunpoint, because at any moment, the floodgates can break open and you have revolution on your hands. And you say, oh man, but a nuclear power going into revolution? That sounds really terrible. Yeah, it is. It is terrible. But propping up a communist regime to go past the point of natural expiration, so that now the country who feels like it has to do something or its civilian is going to revolt is way more likely to use a nuclear device. And there is no option here that is well, what if we just, real friendly with them and we open all doors and then China moderates over time? You know where that hasn't worked? Every place that theory's ever been tested, period. Never has a dictatorial regime moderated. Not once. The Associated Press and CNN and Washington Post and the New York Times and the LA Times can hope and plead and cry and pray that this time this Syrian dictator is going to moderate and be wonderful. Hasn't happened. Oh, this Iranian mullah, this new president is way more moderate than the last one. Sure, he rapes women and children, but I mean, hey, come on. Never ends up moderating. And by the way, none of this is an argument for going to war with China, but the idea that the United States has to prop up those countries, has to prop up China, has to prop up the slave trade regime. You say, well, Tony, if we don't trade with China, then China will just go to other places to do their trading. And I hear that argument. I've heard it quite a bit. The problem is the United States, or I should say the good news is the United States does not have to listen to those rules whatsoever at all. Case in point, Panama. So China has this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt and Road Initiative goes like this. China goes up to a country. There's actually a bastardization of what USAID was created for under John F. Kennedy. Under John F. Kennedy, USAID was created so the president had a personal bribery fund in the Cold War. So that the United States could go to Nicaragua and say, I know the Soviet Union wants to build a canal through you so they don't have to use the Panama Canal, because at that time the United States owned the Panama Canal. Please don't let the Soviet Union build a canal through Nicaragua. If you don't, we will bribe you. We will give you money to help develop Nicaraguan business. That's what USAID is for. You don't like that the United States bribes other nations? Grow up, you're not 4 years old. What you don't want is the United States bribing other nations with transgender comics and spreading atheism in Nepal. Bribing other nations to do the work of the United States? Yeah, that's a thing. That is, in fact, okay. At times. The USAID infrastructure was taken by the Chinese and was created through the Belt and Road Initiative, where China looked out and said, hey, you know that Sarah McLachlan ad where she's, out here singing, and then there's like the kid like in Africa who's really sad in the dirt, so I just see, for just $2 a day, you can help the children of Zimbabwe get the kind of food that they need. Which, by the way, also means that, most of the money and the resources that you send are going to be stolen by local, militaries and, child traffickers. But China saw that and said, hey, that country doesn't have roads. They don't have infrastructure. So what if we go there and we offer it to them? And so China went to places like Panama and they said, hey, this little piece of land you have right here, it would be really great if you had a port right there. And the Panamanian people were like, sure, man, a port sounds pretty good. All right, nice. And so then China builds the port through some shell company like CK Hutchinson out of Hong Kong. And then at the end of the port building say, we own you now. We own you now. And by the way, I'm not paraphrasing. There are actual diplomatic records which have been obtained and certified where China has told South American and Central American countries they own them now because of the Belt and Road Initiative. They come in, they do a little building, and then everyone else pays the price for it in that country forever because China owns them as a vassal state. And so, recognizing the Panama Canal absolutely cannot fall to China, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and again, Donald Trump recognizing right away, China's not allowed to own the Panama Canal. By the way, you want to know what happened with Panama? Why the rhetoric? Why all this conversation? Because as soon as Donald Trump got access to the updated Secret Service information, meaning that as soon as someone's running for the presidency of the United States and it looks like there's a real chance that they could win, or they're a major candidate, they get access to modern intelligence data. So they get the ability for certain security clearances so that the CIA and the FBI and the NSA, etc., can tell them what's going on around the world. So that insert presidential candidate here doesn't get up in front of the world and say something extremely stupid and untrue about a different country. It's kind of useful. Here's the thing. Oh, lots of people don't know what a vassal state is. A vassal state means you're a puppet country. Comment come in. People don't know what a vassal state is. China would basically then puppet them to do whatever they wanted forever. Diplomatic ventriloquism, if you will. So the situation regarding Trump, here's my best guess based on the information provided. Once Trump regained security clearance, saw that Panama had basically sold most of its assets over in several ports to CK Hutchinson, which, because Hong Kong is once again a part of China, and has not just become a separate state, but is now fully controlled. Chinese government's putting Hong Kong protesters in prisons. Remember the protests in the street, the waving of the American flags? Chinese troops coming and mowing a bunch of people down, like good leftists do. Trump, realizing this can't be a problem, comes out and says, I think the United States should own Panama. And he ain't wrong. We built it with our blood and our sweat and our tears and the dead bodies of U.S. men who created Panama out of nothing. Panama is not a real... There's no Panamanian culture. Panama was a group of Colombian rebels whose leader was accused of crimes against Gran Colombia. That's it. That's like the whole thing. And so the United States is like, rebellious group in area, we'd like to build a canal. Presto, now you're a country. Hey, we're going to build a canal through you. Kind of like the Belt and Road Initiative, eh? So the Trump administration, recognizing this ain't so, the Panamanian president, who thinks is a real president, decided to mouth off at the Trump administration, give him some Central American middle fingers, and is like, no, we own the Panama Canal. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio went down there and said, and I can only picture Marco Rubio leaning forward, telling everyone else to leave the room and say, you feeling strong, Mr. President? Because I got to tell you, going against the United States would be muy loco. Would be a shame if that Panama flag was flying underneath an American flag tomorrow. And then he left. And it turns out that worked. And Panama caved to the United States. And then a deal was orchestrated between BlackRock, and I know we can talk about BlackRock later, but they are a major United States private asset. Or assets management corporation, right? They were going to buy the Panamanian ports from CK Hutchinson, and then BlackRock was basically going to turn them over to the United States. Kind of in exchange for leaving BlackRock alone a little bit. That's my best guess at the current situation because that makes sense. That's not a conspiracy. That's like, here's where the cards very obviously are. And so Beijing, who totally didn't run CK Hutchinson, stepped through, and Beijing itself said, oh no, we're canceling this proposed sale of these two Panama ports. And how has the United States responded? By sending missile cruisers to Panama, which is fantastic. So we're going to flip this back over to the Quick News Roundup scene. I want to play this clip of Pete Hegseth. Really, really fantastic stuff. saying just what the United States is and is not going to put up with. I think that's clip 8. Here you go.
I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal.
Sorry, that's not right. For Pete Hegseth and this clip from TV to make the most sense here, we're going to... There we go.
I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal. And China will not weaponize this canal. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations through the deterrent power of the strongest, most effective, and most lethal fighting force in the world. We will do this in partnership with Panama. Together, we will take back the Panama Canal from China's influence. And we will do this along with other capable, like-minded allies and partners. This is what peace through strength looks like.
He's correct. He's correct. The United States should not sacrifice parts of the world to China, which, by the way, is why Donald Trump made the correct move today. For those who are arguing, well, I really thought I wanted tariffs everywhere, and this is market manipulation, and the stock market, they're just making up stock numbers and stuff, which is the copiest kind of cope for Peter Navarro's failed economic policies that I've ever heard. Ever. The truth of the matter is that when the Trump administration put forward a bunch of tariffs, if those tariffs on other countries in the world who are not China would have remained in place, those countries would have and were starting to begin the process of brokering deals with China. That cannot happen. And by the way, Trump was not the only one who recognized this. The Trump administration in the United States was not the only nation who recognized this. Other countries around the world made it exceptionally clear that the Chinese government was running in to take immediate advantage of the open trade field at the time left by the United States. And so Donald Trump, again, whether or not you want to claim that this was planned as some master chess move, I don't think it was. Whether or not you want to claim this is Trump, doing some total super reversal because it was a total failure, which I don't think it was. Trump then enacted a 90-day pause for everyone but China, and he ratcheted up the trade on China, which at this point I feel like should just be commented on by an auctioneer. Because right now the tariffs are like, we've got 34, 50, 50, 50, 50, 100, 104, 104, going to 104, going to 125, 125 right here, 125 for the man in the Oval Office, 150 from Winnie the Pooh. Like, I feel like that's just how it should be covered at this point. In all reality, though, the Trump administration able now to put a 10% tariff on the rest of the countries, either at the end of the 90 days or right now, until better deals can be negotiated, and actually getting some sacrifices from, again, the EU, Vietnam, Japan, the Israelis. If I hadn't said India already, India being one of them, there are over 70 countries, according to the Treasury Secretary, who are willing to negotiate down a 0% trade agreement with the United States. A 0% tariff agreement. Maybe a little bit of something to adjust the trade deficit. If he gets that out of this, it's a win. You say, well, but you can't just stumble and bumble your way into that. Why? Trump's done it with everything else. You ever watch someone that just naturally had a talent for things and it just like royally pissed you off? I knew there's actually, you know what? Here's a great example. There's an episode of SpongeBob in which SpongeBob goes to an art class run by Squidward, and Squidward is trying to teach art. SpongeBob comes in and he can do everything right. He can like sculpt marble sculptures and he can draw a perfect circle and a human head, and it really upsets Squidward because SpongeBob's not doing it. You have to do it by the book. And when he finally teaches SpongeBob to do art by the book, SpongeBob sucks at art. And it ruins everything. Donald Trump in this situation is SpongeBob. Trump just waltzes into a room and he breaks things and he plays chicken and he blusters. And people who love him think that it's actually because Trump is some type of super gifted ultra genius who sees 18 moves ahead, and he's like plotting international super course incredible moves that have never been seen before, and it's a masterful manipulated strategy of ultimate wisdom. Nope. It's not. It's just Trump doing what he's always done. Trump believes he's powerful. Trump is correct. Trump uses that power to gain leverage. Trump then smacks you with a stick until you comply. That is chicken to Trump. That is, in his case, the art of the deal. The more establishment Bushian conservatives and Republicans hate this because it's not Mitt Romney walking into a room and saying, we're just going to get really better than you at everything really slowly over a long period of time. And also, I'm going to get distracted by side projects because I don't want anyone to call me mean or stinky or anything. And it turns out that policy sucks. And by the way, is the Trump policy like a perfect, fix-all for everything? No. Sometimes you do need a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. The Democrats have no idea what to do because right now there are two political parties in this country. There are the Bushian Republicans and there are the more populist Republicans. The rest of us are in the middle of that Republican group trying to figure out what parts from both groups are right and wrong, because that's the unfortunate truth. Parts of both groups are right and wrong. And the left is sitting there yelling as the good representative Stephen Horsford. I guess that's a lot better than a Hors Chevy. Sorry. I couldn't help it. We're getting a little late into the show today. I'm gonna get emails about that one. On C-SPAN 3, yelling in an empty room about how this is Trump manipulating the market because, yes, that's what Trump needs, money. We found it. Yes, the destitute Donald Trump. Mm-hmm.
Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan.
If my mom does not hug me, then do I still get ice cream? Tell me why.
How is this not market manipulation?
How?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Magnets, how do they work?
Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
That's
offshored all of our factories.
And what has that done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people, which was our concern from the very beginning. Tariffs are a tool. It can be used in the appropriate way to protect U.S.
Tariffs, it can be used. So right there you caught a sliver of truth that why the Democrats can't say nothing right now. Why, whether you want to call this, a political master strategy of expert manipulation, or, some masterful American kind of movement. I'm going to level with you right here. Trump is bringing forward a Democrat strategy used in a way that is very not Democrat. The Bill Clinton 90s Labor Democrat in the UAW line wants tariffs because under the unions, auto manufacturing sucked and other countries did it better than us. So instead of not sucking and not writing contracts that weren't corrupt, because guess what? Unions, corrupt, I know, shocker. Instead of that, the unions are like, no, just don't let other countries sell vehicles here, please. And so that tariffing action killed the U.S. auto industry, which led Donald Trump later to claim that Japan was eating us alive, which didn't end up happening at the time. Now, those things said, what does this mean now? Well, the Democrats still technically, like on the old documents that no one reads for the Democratic Party, like underneath like the butt crack of the donkey on the Democratic logo, it says tariffs because they got to support them. And so that's like really important. So Bernie Sanders cannot come out and say, we do not like tariffs. You can't have Chuck Schumer going out and say, we really don't like these tariff policies of the president. You can't have Barack Obama going, let me be clear, these tariffs are not for the American people, because they've all supported them. The populists, however, the Democrats have screwed over in a couple of ways, one of which is we hate straight white men from the Midwest. Guess what? That's where a lot of the factories are, where a lot of the union workers are from. And also, we're going to make you make electric vehicles, which Ford assembly plant workers really didn't like. I know, because they told me with 437 F words laced between the sentences. And now the Democrats have nothing to say because you have the right, which is more free market and free trade, And then you have the populists who are now deciding how far into trade protectionism and to absolutist free marketism do you go? Where do you actually land? And the left has no part in that at all, because they're still, bringing up Sarah McBride, the dude in a skirt, who's, trying to yell that Donald Trump needs to keep his hands off of again, the silliness of the left that has pushed AOC and Governor Tim Walz, whose expertise involves tampons, being friends with school shooters, and chorus kicks, not to mention being a hunter who can't load a shotgun correctly. Yeah, I'm afraid not, Captain Crunch. That one's not going to hit the cereal bowl. All right, I'd say that a good 30 minutes of me griping is more than enough for bonus tonus. For those who have stuck around, really appreciate those of you. Thanks for tuning in to this 300th episode of the Tony Kinnett Cast. You can find our stuff over on the podcast. Subscribe there. Leave a review, only if it's 5 stars. If you don't like our show, delete it. Never return. I don't know. We appreciate you stopping by. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.